Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Dill, we are through 2 weeks of the college football season, and what we're all trying to figure out, like who are the legitimate contenders in the college football playoffs and who are the pretenders. We're trying to learn who of these teams are for real in the 2025 college football season. Dill, the beauty of this episode is number one, I know damn well y'all going to let it fly in the comment section, and rightfully so. Number two, there's going to be a lot of movement with these teams on a week-to-week basis. We're just going to do it every week. We're going to bump the teams that need to be bumped. We're going to knock the teams that need to be knocked, and we're going to leave the teams that need to be left. Let it rip in the comment section. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. And Dill, without further ado, let's start with the team that just ripped our hearts out on a Saturday afternoon. Billy Napier and the Florida Gators. I don't know if there were a set of brothers in the world, Dill, that were higher on Florida going into 2025 than yours truly.
And before you get too deep into this, I'm not quite yet phased. And it was really disappointing. And I know they played really poorly. To me, Florida didn't show any sort of fatal flaw. They played really sloppy, and it's inexplicable why Billy Napier lets these type of games happen year after year after year, game after game, it seems like. But this is still a really good team in my mind. For you to put them in the pretenders category, I think is nuts.
Hey,
put them back in the wait and see and let them get into meeting this SEC schedule because it's still a loaded roster. Again, they obviously dominated that football game against UCF. They just made a couple of unmistakable gaffes or unimaginable.
Okay, you're telling me to wait and see. Dill, I've been waiting and seeing on this football team for 3.5 years, man. And it's been the same thing. You talk about what their fatal flaw is. Look, they ain't no fatal flaw on paper. And straight up, that's why I was a believer.
But even on the field, there isn't. These units are all good in themselves. It's a good football team. They just they make bad mistakes. I don't understand it. I don't know if they can correct it, but
hey, Dill, the aspect of a football team that is arguably most important to be a legitimate contender in the college football playoffs is consistency. Is hey, I know what I'm going to get from this team every single week. More importantly than that, I know I'm going to get a team that's going to figure out a way to win. What Florida has shown me under Billy Napier, and this pains me. The Florida fans know this pains me because I was such a believer. That what Florida has shown me is they don't have that ability. They don't have that consistency. They don't have that ability to, hey, even when we don't have our best stuff, we going to go out there and figure it out. And with the schedule that Florida has, they're not going to play their best football every single Saturday. And you're telling me with that schedule, they're going to figure out how to win 9 more football games? That's a tough sell for me with Florida. I do have a caveat, though. And that is this.
We were all saying this last season.
We've seen this Florida team with their backs up against the wall, fighting for their head coach's job. And they played some of the best football they were capable of playing. And you look at that version of Florida at the end of November and say that was one of the more dangerous teams that we saw in college football. Can they kick it into that gear? And it has to start immediately this Saturday on the road against LSU. But here's the bigger question, Dill. Can they maintain that gear through September, through October, and through November? Because I'm looking at it and saying that they've not shown me once that they can maintain that high level of play. That's why I have him as a pretender. It hurts me, man.
I'll leave you with this. Spot the ball, as Billy Napier likes
to say. Spot the ball don't hit after lose. No. See, no. Spot the ball ain't hitting the same way it hit in August. When you're coming off a loss at home to USF, all of a sudden spot the ball ain't that cool anymore. And I think a lot of Florida fans would probably agree with me on that. Number 2, another one that hurts the boys, Michigan. Got to be a pretender right now, Dell. They have the opportunity to get back into the wait and see category. And look, I ain't moving them from that pretender category until they go on the road to Nebraska and show me they have a pulse on offense. Not only show me they have a pulse on offense, but show me they're willing to play offense at a college football playoff caliber level. Because what we saw on the road against Oklahoma, what that told me was that, number one, Sharon Moore might have a little bit too much of an influence on this offense. More importantly, Dill, it told me they don't have a ton of confidence in Bryce Underwood at quarterback. If that's the way they're going to play offense, they'll be good because I think they have, like, Bryce can make some plays, and I think they have a really good defense. They ain't going to be a college football playoff team until they show me against a quality opponent that they can play the kind of offense required to make the college football
Yeah,
playoff.
I completely agree with that. Like, it is, again, that's what's frustrating as like a Michigan fan, especially. It's like you were watching that, and it's like you don't even know if this offense hypothetically could be good because they didn't even try to be good.
Yeah,
They didn't like have
yeah.
the courage to like make a mistake. It was so safe. It was so conservative. If that's how you're right, if that's how they're going to play, and like that's now how they've played for 2 years. And last year, I get it. Last year they were just horrible. They didn't have a quarterback. You got to do what you got to do. This year, you go out, you bring in Bryce Underwood, and you play like that. Like that's really, really frustrating to
It's
see.
just
I would say.
disappointing, man, because
Really is.
you kind of thought, hey, if we just get a little bit better quarterback play, a little bit more juice from the offense, this team can be the college football playoff team. Now we got to wait and see. Let's go to Florida State. I have them in the wait and see category. I know you might disagree. I know some Florida State fans might disagree. Hey, in fact, I bet a lot of Florida State fans right there with
Do
me.
you think you might be suffering from the like everybody's convinced that game that they beat Alabama in was only because Alabama sucks and people wanted to dunk on Bama?
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie, when I go back and watch it, like Florida State just kind of beat them up and down the field. They beat them up on
Yeah.
defense, they beat them up on offense. They were more physical, they look faster. It's not like Alabama was shooting themselves in the foot a ton of times. And Alabama, say what you will about them, that's a college football championship level team, talent wise. Like again, have they
Yes.
played like that every game under DeBoer? No, but that's what they are. In Florida State, it wasn't mistakes that cost them that game. Florida State just out executed them. They were more physical. They were faster. They were just straight up better. That
I think
matters.
you're right. I actually was one of the more frustrating parts of that Florida State win is like the bigger story was Kalen DeBoer hot seat, Alabama stinks. That I don't know that might be true. They certainly
But it just took a lot of credit away from what Florida State did. And
yeah.
in Florida State, in fairness, still's got to like get over the 2024 look because it's like
Yeah.
they did go 2-10, lest we forget. But it's a totally different team. They have looked awesome to
And
start.
Dill, here's the thing that I could sell you on Florida State is they have built this roster to and this is the benefit of the transfer portal. Like you want your team to look the way you want it to look. Well, you can go to the transfer portal and look. You can talk about the quality of player available, but you can get the type of skill sets you want. Like they wanted to build their offense around Tommy's skill set, and gosh darn it, did they do it. They got a really dynamic rushing attack with some vertical threats where they can work play action with. And Tony White's doing a hell of a job with this defense. My biggest concern with Florida State, depth along the lines of scrimmage. Like that often separates teams from just good teams and like college football playoff caliber teams. Feel like they're an injury or two away from that offensive line having some real question marks.
But that might be the only question because you like the defensive line depth is a lot better than I would like. You've got some
That's
freshmen
true.
coming out of the woods and playing like awesome, like the Desir brothers. I wouldn't have known who those two were before this season started. I certainly know who they are now. They both play well. They play really hard, and you've got some other
Yeah.
young kids playing really good for
Yeah.
Florida State. I kind of get that. The offensive line, you're probably right. Like you have five guys you really trust. Jacob Rizzi, you maybe trust as that sixth guy.
Yeah.
Maybe is too
Well,
light.
here's
Like
the other
he's
thing. Before I don't know if I want to run down the whole offensive line depth chart. That might be for a separate episode on Florida State. Also, there's like that element of Tommy Castellanos and the consistency. Can he maintain? We've seen some good, and we've seen a lot of good through the first 2 weeks. Are we going to see that level of good? Because we know his bads can be pretty dang bad and cost you games. If he can avoid that, if you can avoid the bads that cost you games you shouldn't lose, I think you're right. And Dill, I am very close to moving Florida State up to that contender category, especially when I start looking at the landscape of the ACC. There's some Florida State might be separating a little bit in terms of what they can do in this conference with Miami and Clemson. Nice segue. You want to talk Clemson? Got them in the wait and see category. They were my number 2 team in the country. Again, my top 20. I don't even want to talk about my preseason rankings. They'll wait and see, right? It has to be because they're playing like a team that has a bunch of young guys on this roster. Like it's a veteran offensive line with a veteran quarterback with a ton of NFL talent on defense, and they just ain't playing like it.
And here, I'll get into my fundamental issue with Clemson and why I'm really close to popping them in the pretender spot is unlike a team like Florida, who again I don't think has shown any sort of fatal, uncorrectable flaw. Clemson still, like, they go up and play a good defensive line in LSU. They're still looking like they have the past couple of years, and it's been a huge problem. Like Georgia, they played last year, beat the brakes off them up front. Texas, kind of same thing. You go back the year before, it was the same story. I mean, we've said it like, oh, can Matt Luke get this offensive line going? It's a lot of returning production, but they still kind of look the same when they go play that really good LSU defensive line. And that, to me, like, if it's not fixed, then how am I supposed to, like, really believe right now that that's going to get corrected? Because it wasn't, and it was a huge problem.
How I would maybe push back, like, what teams on their schedule, maybe outside of South Carolina at the end of the year, have the ability to really expose that offensive line?
Yeah, and that's fair. Like, maybe for the college football playoff appearance, but, like, I mean, if they're going to go play like that, they're going to get to the playoffs and they're going to have problems. So that, to me, it's like Clemson's not playing to get into the playoffs right now. They're kind of at that. They need to win a national.
I agree. Yeah. No. Biggest concern is that offensive line good enough to get a run game going and hold up in pass protection against the best teams in the country. That is by far. But I will say this: you got a quarterback that he was top 5 in the Heisman odds for a reason, and you got difference makers on the outside, and you got multiple first-round NFL draft picks on defense, really at all 3 levels. I still think the ceiling of this football team can be high, but it's red alert with this offensive line.
No, and it's kind of like a similar almost thought I have to Texas right now. Like, Clemson, just
take
like
us to Texas. Hey, take
Clemson's
us to Texas
loaded around them. Texas might be the best in the country around Arch Manning, but I think you've seen 2 weeks now where, I know they put some points up against San Jose State. There were still some throws that were just really weak, and he still doesn't look comfortable. I mean, he gets it going, they're immediately right to the top of the list because he plays an average game against Ohio State. They win in Columbus, but, like, you now got 2 straight weeks of, like, just not particularly looking great with Arch Manning.
Here's my take on Texas is that they went on the road week 1 to Ohio State, which is right now the number 1 team in the country, and rightfully so. Arch Manning played look, you could be low on Arch Manning. I don't think he expected him to be that bad. Played about as bad as I would expect Arch Manning, like, could imagine Arch Manning would play. It was still a 1-possession game. Like, Texas still had the ball, had the opportunity to tie that football game.
Because Texas is sick.
Which,
outside of him, they're sick.
Yeah. Which tells you if Arch Manning clicks, and he doesn't even need to be a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback. He just needs to be solid, man.
And isn't it what's really frustrating is you're seeing him make some high-level throws, and you're seeing him miss some of the easiest throws you can. Like that throw to Ryan Wingo late in the game, that 4th down, like, you just can't miss it. That needs to be a play that you can hit in your sleep, and, like, there just are those plays right now that are not there for Texas.
Yeah, and my biggest concern is not only, like, it's like this kid's a 5-star and the arm talent is just, there's a question, right? The site, he just looks incredibly uncomfortable. Like, if Coach Sark is not dialing up throws for him, the ball ain't getting really completed all that much. It's going to be a fascinating team to watch because if it does click, this Texas team, I picked them to win the national championship.
Problem.
Yeah, and I feel good about it as long as Arch Manning puts it all together. Let's go to another one. Another one that kind of hurts me here. South Carolina. I picked him to make the college football playoffs in the preseason. I still think there's that ability to do so. A large chunk of the confidence that I had with South Carolina was that this offensive line was going to be a better unit. Through 2 weeks of the season against Virginia Tech and, more alarmingly, against South Carolina State, the offensive line did not look very good. If they can figure it out up front and give Lenore Sellers a run game and letting him work some play action and give him some cleaner pockets, look, they ain't no doubt this South Carolina team can be good. Maybe even better than I expected because that defense is going to be better. The drop-off ain't going to be there like we thought it was for South Carolina on defense. That offensive line, looking the way it did against South Carolina State and the lack of rhythm that you saw from this Mike Shula offense, that's very alarming if you're a South Carolina fan.
Yeah, and that, to me, that feels like slightly more correctable, so I'm not totally ready to throw them in that pretenders category yet, because we even saw it coming down the stretch last year. Like, we saw them get it rolling, and they were clicking a little bit. like Mike Shula, Lenore Sellers, and more importantly, this offensive line. They got to figure it out, but it's like the same pieces with maybe a little bit more talent on the boundary that they had last year. So I just don't see why they can't get this rolling. I think they will personally. If they do, they're right into that contender
Yeah,
spot though, because
I
the defense
agree
is good, and
'cause
Dylan Stewart is an absolute problem for everyone.
the thing and it's not even to me, it's more like the interior defensive line's making some plays. Brian Thomas on the other side of the defensive line's making plays. I don't. My question is a little bit more like how correctable is it, or do you just not have guys that can play?
But
Like
I've
the
seen Josiah Thompson and Case and Henry play good ball. Like, I don't know. Boaz Stanley at center is actually the only guy who I feel like is playing pretty decent for them. I think they have it, or I don't even think. I almost know they have it there. You just got to start playing like that.
all right,
Because
fair
somehow they
enough.
made like a total 180 switch last year. I mean, their
Well,
offense
that's the thing.
was
If you're a
horrific.
South Carolina fan that's going to bed at night and trying to convince yourself this is a playoff team, it's hey, Shane Beamer historically starts a little slow and ramps it up. So if you can work off the kinks and then start ramping it up without having losses on your schedule, because they do have a gettable schedule though, like Vanderbilt this weekend. Then I believe I had it up. Then it's Missouri. Then it's Kentucky.
It's 5 straight that are not brutal to start the year.
Yeah,
That's
and
for
then you
sure.
go into a bye, and so it's like, can you get the traction going? And there might be an element of like, all right, Mike Shula, new OC, getting on the same page with Lenore Sellers in terms of the concepts we like. Maybe that too. A team that I am itching to move up, man, Auburn. Like I put on the makeup and the clown nose again and said, hey, I believe in Auburn again this year, and I do. It's gonna be wait and see for a while, right? And I think a lot of the Auburn fans probably appreciate that. It's like
I don't know. One big game in the SEC, and I'll be all aboard the hype train because that defensive line, sick. They got some of the best pass
nasty.
rushers, I think, in the game personally.
Yeah,
Jackson Arnold and that offensive line with the running game they have, I think can be a really good tool. I still wonder, like, can that passing attack be clean enough to
yeah,
really get this team humming on all cylinders? Because you didn't really see it against Baylor. You saw it against Ball State, but like take that with a grain of salt. It's
sure.
Ball State.
Yeah,
If this passing attack can be like crisp, let's say, and they can get these wide receivers involved with the rushing attack they have and with the defense they have, I think this can be a really good team.
yeah. No, not enough people are talking about that Auburn defense, and I was a little concerned after because my whole thesis on Auburn was like, I don't even know what Jackson Arnold's going to be, but I got a lot of trust in that Auburn defense, and I got a decent amount of trust in that offensive line to get a run game going. The defense made me nervous after week 1 against Baylor. And it might just turn out Baylor's just going to be scoring on everybody because that offense is very, very fun to watch. If this defense can, and Dill, here's the thing, to the defensive line specifically in the pass rush. Look at the SEC, man. Like there ain't a ton of offensive lines that you have a ton of confidence in this year. Like Auburn has a chance to do some real damage with that defensive line. I have Notre Dame in the contender category with 0 wins on their schedule right now, or 0 wins in their record column right now. Is that fair?
I throw them and wait and see because they're a little bit maybe like Michigan. Are they going to trust CJ Carr to open it up the way I think they need to? Because I'm not sure their defense will be quite as good as what it was last year. Like that defensive line, I don't know that they'll be able to be quite as dominant as maybe they were at times last year.
I would push back on 2 things. Number one, that was Miami, I think, has the best offensive line in the country. If it's not Miami, so I think it's a top 3 offensive
They're up
line in the
there
country,
for
right?
sure.
And so the fact that they didn't dominate that football game is not super concerning to me. And then the CJ Carr comment. Dill, they let it rate. The frustrating thing if you're a Notre Dame fan is one, Jeremiah Love like barely got any touches in that football game. Number 2, you left the training wheels on CJ Carr for a full half, right? And then you got yourself in a hole. And then you were in the hole and said, all right, CJ Carr, training wheels are going off. Go bring us back in this football game. And gosh darn it, that's exactly what he did, man. And so there's a little bit of a difference. Like
Yeah,
Michigan went down in the second half against Oklahoma.
never
They,
tried.
they left them training wheels back still on Bryce Underwood. Notre Dame took the training wheels off. I thought you saw some really good ball from CJ Carr. They got a tough one against Texas A&M this week, but if they can figure out a way to win that one, they're solidified in the contender. Here's the question though,
100%
Dale.
agree with
What
that.
if they drop against Texas A&M and then
Well,
they go
then I
10?
don't even think they really have a path to playoff because the schedule's too weak around it. Like they're in real big trouble. Not like I don't think they can be in it necessarily. I just think with their schedule, I don't see how you can put them in because they'll really have almost no quality wins. Like that'll
Yeah,
be
I'm looking at the schedule right now. It'd be if they lose to Texas A&M, it's
they have
Purdue. Then hey, you
USC.
go on the road to Arkansas, which no, I think that's unfair to say. You get Boise State at home, you get
Nope,
USC at home,
maybe.
dude. Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't
No,
know.
they're in big
The,
trouble
the,
if they lose to A&M because it's just they're not going to be able to stack a good enough resume. I don't think.
yeah, do you think being in the national championship the year before, like it probably shouldn't matter, but you think it will matter in that situation?
No,
Well, what
because
about the
I think
IBO? Really? So you're 10-2. Notre Dame's not making the playoffs, huh? This is do or
no,
die?
I wouldn't say no chance. They'd need a lot of help though.
Yeah.
They need
You
the
need Arkansas
SEC
to
to
be
eat
good.
them. They need SEC to eat themselves. They need the Big Ten to eat themselves, and they'd probably need Florida State or Clemson or like you probably
Yeah.
couldn't have two of those teams in. I don't think. Then you're in a bit of a problem too. I don't know.
Yeah.
10-2 would be tough because they
I
don't have good wins if they
I
win.
think the bigger conversation you would need help from the other teams on your schedule. Like you need Arkansas to be a better team than we'd
I mean,
expect, and you need USC.
how good is Arkansas possibly going to be if we're being honest?
Dude, Taylor Green's kind of an electric factory, man. We'll see. Hey, I picked Arkansas to upset Ole Miss this weekend, so we gonna put a pin in that
We
conversation.
shall see.
Maybe Arkansas becomes a part of this episode next week. All right, last one that I'm gonna throw at you here, and we're gonna go. We're gonna talk about Nebraska. I got them in the pretender category right now. Certainly could change. Obviously put up 1,000,000 on Akron, kind of throwing that game out of the window. The concern for me was against Cincinnati, a Cincinnati team that I'm not super convinced has a great offensive line, and Nebraska was getting moved around a decent
In line
amount.
of scrimmage play, frankly, on both sides was kind of it just feels like it'd be average if you put them in the big dogs. So
Yeah,
like big dogs, the SEC, big like would Oregon compare to them up front? Like Oregon, I think so much better than them. Ohio State, probably same thing. That's the problem. Like their line of
yeah,
scrimmage play just doesn't seem like it's gonna set them apart enough. And
yep.
I mean, their like skill positions around it aren't the best in the country necessarily.
But
Like
but I like the
they're
thing is
really good and it's upgraded for sure. But like
yeah.
I don't think it can carry them with that type of line of scrimmage.
Particularly with that defensive line, especially in the Big Ten. Like if you're just getting moved off the line of scrimmage in this conference, it's hard. And I just we had questions about their defensive line coming into the season. They were, in my opinion, that was the case.
Oh,
That
it was
was my
underwhelming.
takeaway.
It was really
Yeah,
disappointing what they did against
yeah.
Cincinnati. That's not a good Cincinnati team, I don't think.
Any other teams that you want to give a quick shout out before we wrap this sucker up?
Everybody keep your eye on Texas A&M. Texas A&M is a team that we talk about fixable problems. They've looked kind of bad so far, I'd say, and they've cranked it up in the later portions of these games to make the scores look better maybe. They're not playing great defense, but it's really kind of simple things. Like they don't feel like they're tackling well. They're not fitting the run well. The secondary is much improved, I think. Again, haven't really played a ton of
Yeah.
great teams yet. They do have Cassius Howell, and he is a savage, I think, which is
Cassius Howell is
huge.
the most underrated player in all of college football.
And
Let's
that
just be
offense is
straight about it.
awesome. With those wide receivers they have, it's such a good fit with what Colin Klein wants to do.
Yeah.
I'm excited for A&M.
That's the storyline about Texas A&M is that the wide receivers are monsterly upgraded, and especially like you said, it fits what Coach Colin Klein wants to do. I think my question is that we still see the inconsistencies with Marcel Reed. Is he the guy that can maximize? Because Casey Concepcion we kind of knew was going to be a hit. Mario Craver was a monster hit for Texas A&M. And so I'm looking at this wide receiver and say they got some verticality, they got some yards after the catch ability. It's a really, really good wide receiver room around Marcel Reed. We know they have the ability to run the football. Is Marcel Reed the
And
guy
I'm
that
not
can
going to get on
turn
my
in?
soapbox yet, but like come next week, if they beat Notre Dame, I'm going to be talking. So I just want to put it out
100%.
there.
Hey, if they beat Notre Dame, we're moving Texas A&M up to the contender category. There ain't no doubt about it, right? All right, we'll close it there. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. Hey, we'll talk about a bunch of these teams as the season goes on. Appreciate you guys. Let it rip in the comment section. I know dang well you all are gonna. And we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.